Every Night is Game Night, episode 32, Dice Games. Hey everybody, welcome back to Every Night is Game Night. You may also know us as Table for One. If you have not caught the last couple of episodes, we did change the name. You are not losing your mind, and you are not magically subscribed to some new podcast. But this is the exact same solo-focused podcast you've been listening to for the last several months, just with a shiny new name. So this is Anthony, once again, with Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
All right. So this week we're going to be talking about dice games. There are a few that have come out recently that are pretty popular, including one that a lot of you may be surprised we've managed to somehow not talk about yet, just because it is a new Oniverse game, and we've made it pretty clear what we think of the Oniverse. So we're going to be talking about Nautilion. We're also going to be talking about Deep Space D-6. That was the hotness not too many months ago. Dice Stars, which is, we'll get to that, but it's in a genre that's kind of making a comeback of late. And then another one that's been kind of taking over the guilds lately as people have been getting their hands on it, Role Player. So we're going to be running through all four of these and kind of giving you guys a sense of what we think, how they play, feedback, criticisms, all that jazz, all the stuff you guys know and love.
We are going to feed the beast today. It's gonna be all games all the time.
All right, and dice games, which I love.
Dice games.
So I'm all about this. All right, so let's dive in. The first one up here on the list is Deep Space D-6. And so this is it was a Kickstarter game. I believe it started before that as a print and play. And the print and play is perfectly functional because all you have is a mat with your ship on it, a handful of D6s, of course, and then some cards that represent some of the different things that you will face as you basically play the game. So thematically, what it represents is you have different challenges, different obstacles that you're going up against. You have to get through the entire deck of cards in one piece and then clear them all out before you lose all of your hull on your ship. The actual printed game, the one that came out for the Kickstarter backers and that you can now pick up on various online game stores or your FLGS, it comes in one of the coolest board game boxes that I feel I own. It's one of my favorites. It looks like one of the old Choose Your Own Adventure style 1970s, 80s sci-fi books. I really hope he does more of these just because I want several of these on my shelf. Inside the box comes with 4 different ships on boards that you can play as, custom D6 dice, and then the deck of cards that you need. And that's it. That's all that comes with the game. It's pretty straightforward. The game itself is pretty light and fun for what it is. I mean, it takes maybe 20 or 30 minutes. It really definitely hits that kind of mark as the definition of a solitaire game. You're doing the same actions over and over again. You make a small handful of decisions. Sometimes your decisions are harder than others. There are definitely some pretty significant luck elements here because it is a dice game, of course. And basically what you'll be doing is you roll all your dice. They each have different faces. Each of those faces represents something different you can do in your ship. Those are crew members, and they can go to different parts. The captain can reassign other dice. You've got scientists that can kind of resolve certain obstacles or recharge your shields. Engineers that can rebuild your hull, things like that. And what you'll need to be doing is fighting off these different enemies that come at you in the form of those cards. And they'll have somewhere between 1 and 4 hit points, depending on the card. And just survive, stay alive throughout the entire game. It's basically a timer that runs out. You see how far you can get into the deck. The base ship, the base board ship that comes in the game is pretty simple. I think I've played it maybe half a dozen times. I don't think I've lost more than once or twice. So it's not significantly difficult, but you can ramp up the difficulty with the other ships that come in the game. The interesting thing about this game too is just because it is a print and play, there are a lot of other ships out there. So I know somebody sent me something they had built personally of Star Wars, where they created all these different Star Wars ships where they could print out like the Millennium Falcon or an X-Wing and do that. Other people have done, Star Trek variants. I think there is a Star Trek dice game, which is not really this, but kind of gets people kind of pulled from this, thematically. So it's fun, it's quick, it's easy. It's not like the best solo game I've ever played, but it doesn't require a ton of thinking. It doesn't require a ton of setup, and I don't have to reread the rulebook every time I play it. So, for all those reasons, I do enjoy it quite a bit. And that box, man, I really like that box.
I'm jealous. I actually don't have the box. I printed played this game, so I only have the base ship and kind of ran through that a couple times. I won, like you said, won most of the time. It's fun. I think I would play an app of this a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it seems perfect for that little space of like, fire it up. It takes 5 minutes, maybe 10, if you're really thinking about it, to buzz through the game, and that's cool. Does it stand out compared to some other games in the genre? Well, I mean, in the quote unquote quick dice game genre, I'm thinking of a game like Welcome Back to the Dungeon or Welcome to the Dungeon or Dungeon Roll or, other games that are just quick dice games. Obviously, they're all different, but you're doing the same thing. Does this game stand out from that? Not necessarily for me, because I'm not into space. I know I didn't see Star Wars until I was like 25, which is to the horror of my friends.
What?
I know.
I didn't know
I'm a
that.
child. I was born in 1977, the
Oh my
year the Star Wars came out.
God.
So the space theme doesn't sing to me as it does. So I mean, so maybe it's just a theme thing for me. But so what I'm trying to say is it may not replace a game that is similar that's already on your shelf or on your phone or whatever it is, but it is cool. And if you don't have one of these games, this is a really good version to get.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I agree for the most part. I think I'd put it in the middle for me. Like, I like this a lot better than something like Dungeon Roll. But it's, like I said, it's not my favorite light and quick solo game. That said, there's so much you could do with this system. And to be fair, he ran a Kickstarter recently that was just a whole bunch of dice with custom faces and games that could be played with those custom dice through print and play. So it'll be interesting to see like the different ideas he has. But also, I would like to see this one expanded a little bit. I think an app would be really cool because it would take 4 minutes to play, which would be awesome. You just like zip through it real quick a bunch of times. But as it is right now, yeah, it's fun. It's not something that hits the table frequently, but if I think about it and I'm in a a sci-fi kind of mood, I'll go for it.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So the thumbs up from me and from Anthony on Deep Space D6. Definitely a worthy addition, and people that are playing it in the guild and in the Facebook group and everything, definitely good taste there. So the next game we wanted to talk about was Nautilion. Anthony referred to it in the intro. Yes, we finally are getting around to talking about Nautilion. Game 4 of the Oniverse series, designed by Shadi Torbey. This is his 4th entry in the series, or 5th if you count Urbion. Who knows what's going on with that. But published by Z-Man Games in quote-unquote 2016. I say quote-unquote because there was a lot of... It was published, but it wasn't distributed effectively in 2016. I think there's actually still some distributors that are struggling getting their hands on this game. But there was a little bit of so a lot of some stores got it, some online stores got it, some stores didn't. Now I feel like whoever wants to play the game has been able to get a copy. So what are you doing in Nautilion? As opposed to the other Oniverse games, Onirim is cards, Sylveon is tower defense with cards, Castellion is tiles and castle building. This game is dice and movement with dice. So I read a designer diary of this, and Shadi actually had the crazy idea of making a fun roll and move game. So roll and move, what? Don't do this to me.
I feel like that's the ultimate challenge. I almost want to like if we could run a Kickstarter and just get famous designers together and be like, roll and move. That's all you got to do. Do something cool with it.
That's right. It'll come up with basically. So what he did was he came up with a game that's not exactly roll and move, which is kind of how you work around it. This game is more like roll, assign, and move. I think Albert just covered this over at the One Player podcast. So it's roll and then strategize and then you move. So there are these. So you roll 3 dice at the beginning of every turn, and you assign them to 3 actors on the board. So there's the Nautilion, which is your little ship, the Phantom, which is the enemy pirate ship, and then there's the quote unquote Dark House, which is the shadowy menace that looms over the board. So it's just kind of a card or a little meeple of a little guy who just creates like a resistance for the whole game. So you have an active resistance and a more like a passive environmental resistance. Each ship is moving towards each other on a board that you construct, and you construct this board out of these little tiles. So you get 36 of these tiles in the base game. You can add more with the expansion. So you can design them however you want. You could lay the tiles out in a spiral. You could lay the tiles out in a wave. I see a lot of people doing the wave. You can lay them out in a straight line if you have a giant table. You do whatever you want with it, as long as the Nautilian's at one end and the pirate ship is at the other end. And the dice that you roll, you program them to each actor. So the Nautilion get to die, the Dark House get to die, and the Phantom get to die. So not really roll and move, right? I mean, he's doing something very, very different with this. So what exactly are you doing in the game? Well, it's a race, really. The Nautilion is trying to get to the Phantom home base before the Phantom gets to the Nautilion home base. So at a certain point, they're going to kind of intersect. And nothing really happens in the base game. They just kind of intersect. You're really just trying to create this race. And while you're quote unquote racing, you're collecting certain tiles on the board. So the Nautilion, has a sideboard, and the sideboard had these little cockpits. So you're trying to fill the cockpits with certain tiles. So it's like a set collection game, right? You're collecting 1 through 9 times 4 is 36. So there's 4 copies of each number. You're trying to get 1 through 9 on your table and also beat the Phantom, which is pretty interesting. I think the best games that you're doing 2 things at once. So like Pandemic, you're cleaning out cubes and you're trying to cure the disease with your cards. So you have to kind of create that tension. In this game, the tension is you want to get to the end of the other end of the board before the Phantom gets there, but you also have to pick up your the tiles that you need along the way. And you have the dice, so you're assigning the dice. There's also like these little reserve tokens, and you could use kind of magic spells to manipulate that, so you're not totally at the mercy of the dice. So that's basically it. That's basically the basic game. The game has 5 expansions, and they all add a little bit of a wrinkle. And either the ships attack each other when they cross, or the Dark House is more powerful, or some other you create alternate victory conditions. You can mix them all together from like a mega game, which is pretty hard. I don't recommend that for the faint of heart and for people who don't want to play these games for more than a half hour. But it's there, and 5 expansions is nothing to sneeze at. Word about components. Components are up to the standard of the Oniverse. The little tiles, they work. The artwork is stellar as always by Elise Plessis. The game footprint is pretty big because you are laying out 36 these tiles. The tiles themselves, they tell you like lay them out face down and then flip them all up. So you're sitting there, you have to put them face down to shuffle, and then you have to flip them all up, which you're flipping over 36 little tiles. It's like, oh, I got myself into a big setup.
I don't do that. I'm not doing that.
You're not living that life?
No, you just throw them all in a bag, pull them out one at a time.
Oh, a bag. But where do you store the bag? The bag doesn't fit in the box.
No, I know. I just got extra bags lying around. But like the first time I did that with my big meaty hands, I was like, no, this is almost painful. You're just like flipping these tiny little things and knocking them all out of formation. It's no good.
I mean, even pulling it out of a bag, like I compare it to a game like Castellion. Castellion is ready to go basically right out of the box. You can, you're pulling the tiles out of the bag, but you're placing them. That's the game, is pulling them out of the bag and putting them down. In this game, you have to pull all the tiles and arrange everything ahead of time, and that creates a lot of setup. For a game that's supposed to be pretty quick, that's a thing. It's hard. It's a hard thing to just kind of like, oh, I want to play this game. Boom. I can play a game at Castellion in the time it takes to set up Nautilion. So there's that little bit of an issue. Going back to the good parts, this game is pretty thinky and it's pretty strategic compared to like a game like D-Space D6. It's almost like funny to talk about both of these two games in the same episode. They both use dice, but they scratch very different itches for me. D6, D-Space D6 is very quick, very minimal decisions. This game, you're looking ahead. It's like, oh, I only have 1 5 left. I need to juggle my movement so that I hit that 5, or I need to have enough reserve tokens so I can turn that 2 into a 5 or whatever it is. So you're thinking way ahead. That's pretty cool. I did like that, but at the end of the game, you're still rolling. It's still lucky. So I've had games where I've like had a lot of strategy put into it, and at the end, I just get a bunch of crappy rolls and I lose. And for as long as I took to set up the game, and for as long as it takes to play the game, especially once you start mixing in expansions, I don't like luck. It's almost like, I think Tom Vassell mentioned this in one of his recent videos. I like my luck in inverse proportion to the time it takes to play the game. If it's a quick 5 to 10 minute game, yeah, bring it on. All the luck in the world. This game is pushing more towards what, Anthony? 20 minutes, 30 minutes more with setup?
Yeah, I mean, if you played multiple times in a row, I think you could play it in 15 minutes. But if you just were going to set it up and play it once, yeah, like you're looking at 20 to 30.
And then the setup time and all that kind of stuff. So for the end of, at the end of the game, there's still a dice game, and you're still and there's a lot of ways to mitigate it. There's a lot of strategery, to borrow a term from, who was it, Will Ferrell in Saturday Night Live. But so it kind of created a little bit of a dissonance for me. It's still a good game. I'm going to keep it in my collection. I'd probably rank it behind Castellion and ahead of Sylveon in terms of my personal rankings. So I give it a 7 on BGG. Good game. I'd be happy to play. If someone wants to play 2-play with me, I'd be happy to do it, but not the first game I'm going to pull off my shelf.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so for me, like Deep Space D6 is very tactical. You can't really plan ahead too much because you get the dice that you get every round and you can't mitigate them too much. This one is much more strategic because you can see everything you need to do as soon as it's set up. And you know how many times you can manipulate the dice. You don't know what the dice are necessarily going to be, but you can plan for a lot of things. And really the only time the dice really hit you is if you're running really tight at the end, which, like you said, yeah, that can hurt. But I like that. I like the more strategic element of it. I think it takes about the same amount of time to play as Deep Space D6. So, like, it's really, for me, these two right now. It's what mood am I in? Do I want something just tactical where I just do the things each turn based on what I'm doing? Or do I want to be able to take a high look at everything on the board and make a decision, or try to make decisions in advance and then work the game around my strategy? I like that quite a bit. And the luck element doesn't bother me quite as much. I mean, I'm a guy who likes Hostage Negotiator a lot and always have. Mm-hmm. Luck doesn't bother me too much. It can frustrate me. I can get pretty mad at it if I played it perfect and then the dice just refuse to do what I want them to in the last round or the last couple turns.
3 4s.
Or like, oh, I need this one number. I need a 3. 1, 2, 4. I have 1 token left, so I can reroll all of these or lose, and then it just comes down to the roll, right? That's tough, but it's also kind of fun. Like you said, if it didn't take so long to set up, if it didn't have these tiny little tiles that drove me crazy with my big fingers, I'd be with you. I think I'd rank it a little closer to Castellion. I think I'd give this like a 7.5, but I'm with you. I think Castellion is still better just because it comes out of the box, like you said, like ready to go. What I do like about this game, though, is that the base game without expansions is still pretty good and accessible. Some of these Oniverse games, base game without expansions, aren't very good. So
Sylveon.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to add stuff to it. You have to make it more complicated. You have to make it longer. You don't really have to do that here. I've had fun with some of the expansions, but I also have just played the base game as is, and enjoyed that too. And it's challenging. So I think it does that pretty well in a way that not all these do. So yeah, I'm with you for the most part. I think I like it a little bit more, but it's not the best one yet.
It's good though. It's good. If I see people are enjoying it, solid game, strategic. It's hard to get a strategic dice game So if that's an itch that you want scratched in your life, then I don't know of any others that where you're rolling a lot, because obviously we're going to talk about role play. That's a very strategic game as well in its own way, but you're not rolling a lot. This game, you are rolling a lot. You're assigning those dice, but it's in a very strategic way, so it's unique, and I definitely gets plus points for that. So thumbs up for for Nautilion as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm 100% with you on that. Like, I love the idea of a strategic dice game, and this pulls it off. So, also thumbs up. All right, so the next one up here is very different. So this is a roll and write game, or whatever you want to call it. But the basic idea is you roll some dice.
What's it called?
It's called Dice Stars.
There you go.
You didn't need to know that. They're all the same. No, this is actually, it's a little, well, okay. I mean, I'm going to say it's a little bit different from some of the others. Maybe people disagree with me, but I like this one quite a bit. There's a lot of these out there. Probably the most famous ones are Rolling Japan, Rolling America. There's a few others I played recently, but this one is by Bruno Cathalo and Ludovic Moblanc, and it's from, I think, WizKids of all people. Might have been Matagoat originally.
Yeah, WizKids brought it over.
That's right. So it is exactly what it sounds like. There's a bag of dice and a pad that you write in what you rolled. So on everybody's turn, what you'll do is you'll draw 1 to 3 dice out of this bag, roll them, add them to the pool, and then decide what you're going to pull from that pool and write down on your sheet. In the solo game, you're basically playing all the same rules as you would in a multiplayer game, except there's a chart at the bottom that you'll be marking off as you go, and you get negative points every time you mark one off. So for each die left out there, or for each combination of dice left out there, you get a certain number of points get added to your sheet. They add up. Eventually, if you fill up all those negative points, like if there's nowhere else to put the negative points before you finish your sheet, you just lose. But even if you don't just lose, it's a lot of negative points, so your final score needs to be higher than those negatives to have a positive score. You get to choose, the number or the color on the dice, and then you add them either to the column or the row on the sheet. Then you fill those out, and then there are multipliers on the side that you can cross off based on getting the star symbol on your dice. And you'll be taking sets of these dice based on color or number from the pool that you're building. And then once you can no longer make any or write anything in on the sheet based on what you're doing, you are all done, and you will see what your score is. It's pretty simple. It takes like 5 or 10 minutes, and I like the wrinkle of the solo element where you have to manage the dice pool, not let it get too big, not let it kind of hit you too hard. You have to be efficient and not try to go for those big moves, because if you do, you might get hit for a lot of negative points very quickly and just lose the game straight out. So it's pretty easy to not lose the game straight out, but at the same time, to ensure you get a decent score as well, there's a definite press your luck element here that ends up getting mitigated, I think, a little bit by the solo. If you play it multiplayer, you're going to press your luck a little bit more because you can. There's not as much penalty to that. But I like it. It's fun. It's quick. It's very quick. It's accessible. I think of all those roll a bunch of dice and write down, what you rolled games, it's one of my favorites.
So I have Rolling America. I enjoy Rolling America. I don't know what this game adds. Yeah, they're stars, but and I guess there's a little bit more of a push your luck aspect. I shouldn't be that kind of flip about it. Rolling America is more of a kind of a straight roll and write game. This one is, that gives you that kind of Yahtzee style. It's like, okay, I'm going for this big score, wah, wah. Or yay, it does that a little bit better. But for the most part, like if you have one of these games and you're happy with it, then you're good. So recently, I don't know if you saw this, Anthony, there was an article on BGG or linked to BGG by Gil Hova. What he talked about was the cycle of gamers. So as the industry kind of goes year to year to year, there's a lot of churn in the gamer community. So there's people that fall off and there's people that come on. But when you come on, you have this massive rush to buy a lot of games at once. So like I remember this happened to me, and whenever I started playing games, I got my first games and all of a sudden, I just bought a whole bunch of stuff, went to the Dice Tower, Central Games, and all these other game lists. I got to buy a bunch of stuff. And I'm not going to buy old stuff, right? I'm going to look up new stuff. And I need a dice game. I'm going to look up the newest dice game. So when I ask myself why this game as opposed to other games, that's what I come to. Like, I come to the fact that this game isn't unique, but it's positioning itself to take advantage of the 2017 gamer that is looking to fill their collection. And they don't want to go back to something that's old, 2011, 12. They want the shiny new thing. So I guess a little bit of cult and new there. And here's a game that fills the roll and write or quick dice chucker slot in your collection. So if you're in that position, then yes, I'm not saying this to be critical. I'm just saying he's what Gil's pointing out is this is what happens with gamers. People who are coming in the hobby 2016, 2017, they're going to look at this game and go, oh, okay, I'll get this for that. And in a couple years, they're not going to buy any games. They're not going to buy the 2019 roll and write game. They're going to buy another game. So I don't know. Looking at it in that context, I can understand why this game was published and put out and everything. But as a game itself, I have it, and it's called Rolling America or Quicks or some of these other games.
Yeah, I feel like it's not super unique because it's not a mechanic that can really go a lot of places. But it is, you throw in the push your luck element, I really think it adds a little bit to it. But I see your point. I now have this and Rolling Japan. I don't necessarily feel like I need both. Now that I have both, I'll probably keep them. But it's definitely going to be the one people pick up because it's the one that's on shelves, and it's the shiny new release with the 2017 release date.
But you've seen that, right? Like, you've seen how new gamers just buy a whole bunch of stuff off the shelves.
Oh yeah.
And then after like a year or two or three, it really peters out. It's like, okay, they limit their purchases a couple a year to fill different slots or replace stuff, but they're not in that mad rush to buy, So I totally agree with that thesis.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like, even as someone who plays possibly even more games than the average person, just because I go to a lot of these cons and stuff, or people are showing me new things, but I have severely slowed down my own acquisitions because of space and because almost everything in the collection is covered at this point. But if I look at the years from which most of that collection comes from, it is from the first 3 years or so of collecting. So I'm definitely with you on that. I think that's definitely a thing we all go through, and very few people probably manage that effectively to get a good cross-section of games going back further. So yeah, you do get a lot of games like this, and they will always happen because you will get generic worker placement, you will get generic co-op every couple of years, and people will buy them because they're new.
Mm-hmm. You'll get the dice roller, you'll get the area control game, you'll get the Euro or whatever hot Euro there is. And, I think, the games get a little bit better. Like, certain games get a little bit better. I do think Euros have come a long way. I do think cooperatives have come a long way. This, I just don't see that there was a lot of room for growth, like you said earlier. So if you are a gamer, you've been in the hobby for a couple of years, I don't see needing to pick this up. But if this is the very first exposure and that's the dice game on the shelf, then yeah, man, pick it up.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, if you don't have one of these roll and write games, it's good. It's just if you already have one or two, it's not really such a evolution that you need to have more than one.
All right. So the last game, and it's taken us a little while to talk about this game. This game has been kind of buzzed about for a little while. It's Role Player. So this was designed by Keith Matejka. Oh my goodness. Matejka. That's really giving me a hard time for some reason. And published by Thunderworks Games in 2016. Kickstarted, I believe. So this game, it's D&D, right? But what's the fun part of D&D? Is the fun part of D&D the actual adventure, or is the fun part of D&D the character creation before and after the adventure? For a lot of gamers, it is that character creation. Like they'll play the game and they'll have fun and everything, but then they'll go home and they'll open up their source books and they'll spend hours poring over feats and items and min-maxing their character and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of games play on the adventure part. This game plays in that character creation part. This is a character creation game. So what you're doing in this game is you're boosting your stats, you're getting items, you're gearing up, and then at the end of the game, you basically score a lot of points for having the best hero, and then that's it. There's no adventure after that. There's just none of that stuff. But if you're into that, it's really cool. So how does this game accomplish that? So this game is a dice game, like we're talking about throughout the episode. It is another dice placement game. So you roll dice at the beginning of the turn, and each player, or if you're playing solo, then you do, and there's rules to kind of govern how you do it. So you roll your dice, and then you pick dice to assign to a certain stat. And so they're just 6-sided dice. There's nothing really special about them. And if you know D&D, the stats are based on a 1 to 18 system. So 666 is 18. That's the best stat you can possibly get. So you're trying to get as good a stats as you can, basically one at a time. So every round, you're going to roll a pool of dice. You're going to draft one of them. You're going to assign them to one of your stats, strength, dex, int, all that kind of stuff. And each one of those, as you place the die, you're going to get a certain action to manipulate those dice. So there's a lot of dice mitigation. It's not just the dice chucker. You roll the dice at the beginning of the turn, then the strategy begins, that's cool. So then, if you put your thing in strength, you can do a certain thing with the dice. I figured exactly how the translations work. But you can, flip the dice, or you can switch the places of the dice, and you get bonuses depending on like how you place dice in relation to what you're trying to accomplish. So along with your character, whatever your character is, a dwarf, an elf, whatever it is, you have these other characteristics, like you're a scoundrel. And it has little flavor text, which describes what a scoundrel is, which is, pretty cool. And then it sets some sort of like condition that you have to achieve. So like you have to put a blue dice in this slot. You have to put a red dice in this slot, and you have to kind of match that. You get points for that. There's also your alignment, your lawful, your whatever. The dice that you place kind of follows this little tracker, and you have to make sure you get the tracker in the right place to score more points. Basically, what am I describing? Place dice, get points. Boom. So then, and that's basically it. Like you roll your set of dice at the beginning of the turn. You assign your dice. You're trying to get the beefiest stats possible. You're trying to get 18s and everything, which is the dream of every D&D player. If you can't get 18s, you're trying to get your stats in a way that score certain points or achieve certain milestones. You're trying to use whatever money you get to buy the best items. You might get an item set, so you look pretty good, and you're matching breastplate and sword and all that kind of stuff. Or you're getting skills, and the skills allow you to do other things too. There's a lot going on here. And I have to say, of all the 4 games that we're talking about, this one is my clear favorite. I really, really, really like this game. The component quality is good. It's visually appealing. The theme is cute. I gotta admit, as opposed to the heresy of me not having watched Star Wars. I am a D&D player from very, very young, and I know. I have watched them though. So my friend strapped me to a chair and made me watch all 3 of the originals. But I did play D&D when I was a very young kid. I did pore over those, make my character spend hours doing that. So I like that. It definitely appeals to the players that like that. The way in which it gives you mitigation. So every time you acquire a power or acquire an item, it lets you mitigate the dice roll. So if the center dice are a bunch of crappy dice, they're 1s and 2s and everything, you could still do stuff with them. This game scratches that same itch, a similar itch to Nautilion, in that it's a strategic dice game. Nautilion is like this constant rolling, like there's a lot of quote unquote action. It doesn't take you long to strategize your move and go. This one, you're really like you roll, and it takes you a couple of minutes to figure out, okay, where am I going to put this die? Which power am I going to trigger? What am I going to buy? All that kind of stuff. I really, really, really liked it. Anthony, have you had a chance to play this game?
No, not yet. No, the first time around when I actually was looking for it, it was out of print everywhere. This last printing, I just haven't been able to get my hands on a copy yet. But I really, really want to. I love the theme. It's such a cool idea. Like how to take a generic fantasy thing and make it interesting and unique. Take this one little thing that everybody loves to do and make a game out of it, which is awesome. But yeah, it just hasn't managed to hit my table just yet.
So I didn't get a chance to play the solo mode. I've looked it up and I've seen videos. I played multiplayer. And by the way, at 4 players, it's a 2 to 4 or 1 to 4 players out of the box. 4 players is a little bit long because the actions are pretty repetitive. Like you're rolling, placing, activating an ability. But at lower player counts, really good, and I can see the solo mode being really good. The solo mode, it's not a dummy player per se, but there is like a quote-unquote enemy die that just kind of creates resistance, which, that's perfectly serviceable as a solo mode. And the game is really excellent, so that's what really carries solo mode is the fact that the game is good. My biggest complaint about this game is not about the game itself, but that it's hard to find. I think the designer has been on record as saying he had no idea this game was going to blow up like it did, which, kudos to him for making something that really hit hard. But this game is expensive, like $60 MSRP. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's rough.
That's the same price as Dead of Winter and Robinson Crusoe and Agricola. These are all $60 games with like a board. So this game has no board. This game is cards that lay out on the table, and they're kind of a common market. And you have your little player board, which is where you put the dice. You really, without the production value, you could have printed and played this game. You could have just printed out a little character board. You could have, you could include your own dice if you get the right colors of dice, and make, the only thing you'd need is like files for the cards and stuff. But you could really make that work. How do I get from that to $60 MSRP? Good Lord, man. Is it me? Like, I want a board when I pay that much for a game, and I know you could get it cheaper online, but if it's $41 of cool stuff, I can get Dead of Winter for that same price or whatever other non-Asmodee game, because I know Asmodee is a little bit more expensive. But is that unreasonable of me to think this way?
No, man, you want to get a significant amount of value out of the box. I mean, there's games that I've pointedly avoided buying, even though I love them, because the pricing was just super out of whack. So I blame you not. It might be the reason I don't have this yet, honestly.
So then, I mean, this game, it's good. Like, it's really good. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that the game is bad. I love this game. Like, at a cheaper price point, I'd be all over this. But at that price point, I have to think twice, because it has strategy, but I mean, compared to a game like, Robinson Crusoe or Agricola, it's not in that. We're not punching at that weight, We're definitely kind of, a little bit of it's like a family weight strategy. Like if you guys have played games like Clank or, so like a 2.5 maybe on the BGG weight scale. So, that's not a bad thing, but man, that's a rough one, paying all that money for, something that's as lightweight without the production and without the board. Maybe I'm just like too. Let me stop complaining about the lack of board. This game is really. My complaint has been registered. Other than that, this game is really, really good, really unique. If I had a choice between this and Nautilion, I'm playing this. Just full stop. I do like this game a lot.
All right. Well, I will have to track it down then, because that is high praise.
I try to reserve my high praise for games that deserve it.
I know, right? It didn't actually mean something. Yeah.
I find myself often saying, "Oh yeah, thumbs up, not quite for me." No, this game is for me. If I could find this game on clearance, or if I could find, make some sort of math trade work, because I have a lot of games here I can trade, I would pull the trigger right away. This game is excellent. If you can make it work for your finances and make it work in your game collection, do it.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. 4 dice games that we like to varying degrees.
Yes. All good though.
Yeah, all
Gotta say,
great.
All good games.
Yep, definitely all good games. All worth a play at the very least. Whether you like dice or not, it's good to experience the different options that are out there with the dice games these days.
All right.
But for this week, that's going to go ahead and be everything. Thank you once again for stopping by for this first episode of the podcast under the new name, Every Night is Game Night. You guys can find us once again on BoardGamersAnonymous.com. All the episodes are posted there along with show notes. We are on Board Game Geek, Guild 1735. And you will also find us on Facebook, Board Gamers Anonymous, and Twitter. We have 2 Twitter feeds there, the BGA podcast as well as the Every Night is Game Night Twitter feed. So we'll post links for everything on all of those in the show notes so you can track us down and stay in touch. We definitely want to hear from you. But for this week, that's going to go ahead and be everything. And until next week, we'll save you a seat at this table for one.
You call the table for one.
No!
We need a new ender. Hit us up if we have a new ender, people.
Yeah, because I'm not actually that clever. It just kind of came out that way in the first episode. So I'm stuck. We're stuck, guys.
So this is going to be a little bit of work in progress to figure something out. But until then, later, everybody.